You probably haven't heard these four important disability words, but they could make or break your claim. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to tell you those four words right now: sedentary, light, medium, and heavy. But you don't know what these words mean for your SSDI claim, which is why I'm here to break it on down. So let's get it started. You may have watched my video on what's called the RFC, the Residual Functional Capacity Form. So if you haven't watched it, here are some of the highlights. The RFC is the form DDSs use to determine whether you can go back and return to your past work or perform some other work. The RFC is the most you can do with your current physical or mental conditions in an 8-hour workday. But here's another wrinkle to this RFC deal. There is a way to read this RFC based on the exertional levels. These four exertional levels are basically ranges of work the RFC will fall under. Before I get into the levels, I need to share something else with you regarding these levels. Now, in the physical RFC, which is different from the mental RFC, there are two basic groups of limitations. There are what's called exertional limitations, and there's another group called non-exertional limitations. But our focus is on the four exertional limitations. And these limitations are those four words: heavy, medium, light, and sedentary. Here are the basic differences. And I say the word basic because there are levels to this. There's first what's called heavy work. Heavy work in a basic heavy exertional base is being able to lift and carry 50 pounds frequently and 100 pounds occasionally, and being able to stand and walk for 6 hours a day. Then there's what's called medium work. Medium work is being able to lift and carry 25 pounds frequently and 50 pounds occasionally, and being able to stand and walk for 6 hours a day. Then there's what's called light work. Light work is being able to lift and carry 10 pounds frequently and 20 pounds occasionally, and again, being able to stand and walk for 6 hours a day. The light, medium, and heavy bases all require standing and walking for 6 hours in an 8-hour workday. You're never going to be able to say you walked and stood or lifted and carried for 8 hours because you got breaks and lunches built into your schedule. So 6 hours is looking at you being able to do that for the working hours of your work day, not counting breaks and lunch. The last one is called sedentary work. A basic sedentary base is being able to lift and carry up to 10 pounds frequently. Somewhere underneath 10 pounds is what's frequently done. And then being able to lift and carry a maximum of 10 pounds occasionally. But the difference with sedentary is in the term sedentary. Sedentary basically means sitting. So you're doing the majority of your work in a seated position. So with sedentary work, you need to be able to sit for 6 hours a day and then stand and walk for at least 2. So with sedentary work, lifting less than 10 pounds frequently is a major deal, especially if you have to use your hands and fingers to do the rest of your work. I'll deal with that in another video on what is meant by less than sedentary, because if you get that decision, things get really, really interesting. I want you to know that there are gray areas in between these bases of sedentary, light, medium, and heavy, because there are non-exertional limitations on the form on the RFC that are sometimes accounted for. And these non-exertional limitations can erode or chip away at these exertional bases. In other words, what might look like a medium level of work or medium base, because of non-exertional issues, may end up becoming less than a medium base. So you could have a limitation like stooping is limited to occasional. So because of your occasional stooping, you may not be able to do medium work at the basic level, because that occasional stooping is kind of chipping away at that medium base and is reducing or eroding that medium base to look like a light base. So when we look at this case of a person who has a medium base with occasional stooping, the number of jobs available in the medium base are not going to be sufficient enough to send a person back. So they have to look at lighter jobs that the person can still do with the occasional stooping and all the other limitations that they have going on. So the number of jobs in the national economy have a lot to do with you being able to perform work at the base that the RFC is giving you. So in the scenario that I talked about, where the occasional stooping eroded that medium base and reduced it to kind of like a light level of work, the examiner would then treat the RFC as though it were a light base rather than a medium base. So follow me on this, because this is really important. Now look, give me right here. So let's say your past work was at a medium level of work, required the 25 pounds frequently, 50 pounds occasionally, standing 6 hours, all that stuff. But the occasional stooping you can no longer do. And the RFC shows that. So the examiner would not send you back to your past work, because the occasional stooping is going to impact your ability to do medium work. And the number of jobs in the national economy may require more than occasional stooping. So that will kind of take out the ability to do medium work, and the examiner will look at lighter jobs that you may be able to do. So if the past work that you did in a scenario that I just talked about is at a medium level, the examiner better not send you back to that work, because you can't do it anymore. So because of how you used to do it, or maybe how it was done in the national economy, because of that occasional stooping, that blocks you from being able to go back to your past work. And then the examiner will have to start to look at what you can do in other jobs that don't require occasional stooping and maybe at a lighter level of lifting. Now, you've been hearing me drop these letters RFC throughout this video, and I already told you what the RFC really deals with. It's the most you can do with the conditions in an 8-hour workday. But you still don't know anything about this form. And you really need to know, because if your case gets this far and you don't know what this form is about, you're going to be mad at yourself and the DDS examiner. Why? I'll tell you why. Because if the examiner sends you back to your past work with your physical conditions, you're not going to be happy about that. And then you're going to come right back to this channel trying to figure out what this all means when you could have watched the first time. I know I had a little edge on that, but I'm just being real with you. I'm trying to help you know what this is about. And if you haven't watched the video, this is your opportunity to do that, and I'm going to do you a solid right now. Go to this video right here, and I'll explain to you what the RFC is. Just click on the screen, and it'll take you right to this video. I'll see you on the other side in the next video.